big money power, accidents don't just happen, and coincidence is only an excuse for the guilty. Welcome to the Conspiracy Chronicles.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We must not fail to comprehend its grave implications.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations.
There has been an attempt, as perhaps you know now, on the life of President Kennedy. He was wounded in an automobile driving from Dallas Airport into downtown Dallas. The flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy died at 1:44 a.m. today, June 6, 1968.
Of an incident that took place less than 15 minutes ago at the Washington Hilton Hotel when shots were fired at President Reagan.
A second bomb has been found inside that federal building in Oklahoma City.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about.
Exactly, the second building.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
And now, here are your conspiracy detectives, Joe Joseph and Tim Watts.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is the Sunday edition of Conspiracy Chronicles for the 19th of February, 2012. Joe Joseph here, along with Tim Watts.
Hey,
Tonight, we're going to take you on a journey, and that journey has to do with Agenda 21, one of those grand conspiracies that the elitists, the globalists, want to depopulate us, corral us, and enslave us. So tonight we'll go over that. And, of course, we have tonight our good friend Popeye at federaljack.com and Down the Rabbit Hole here on Orion to talk about it with us. It's such an insane topic to think that there are people out there that want you dead because you're a useless eater. It's a real eye-opener when you come to actually realize that there are that many people out there with those intentions, Tim.
Oh, yeah. You know, the fact that they want to depopulate so much. If you look at the Georgia Guidestones, where did that monolithic piece of crap come from? You know, nobody's ever fessed up to that yet. And that one talks about 500 million people. 6.5 billion people have to go.
That's a lot of people, man. I mean, think about it. The Black Plague, at its height, didn't kill that many people. You know, that's the thing that's chilling. It's a chilling number. I mean, obviously, you're not going to get that in a gradual fashion. I just can't see that happening because how do you do that gradually? How do you bring the numbers down? Because you think about it, like in the United States, what's the typical number of kids that families generally have? Is anywhere from 2 to 3 children. So, I mean, you've got a huge population boom going on, and there's no way that you can gradually implement it. I think they I think they do things like the viruses or the flus or these bioengineered, the GMO foods. They do all that kind of stuff to keep it under control. But as far as depopulating, I mean, outside of a global catastrophe, I mean, I don't know how they could go ahead and get down to that number so quick without damaging themselves too.
And, you know, they always say that it's about population. We're overpopulating. We're using too many of our resources. That's just crap, folks. I mean, seriously. Yeah. We're on the front edge of new technologies that could alleviate most of that if they just wanted to. Secondly, we've got plenty of land. We do have resources. We pay farmers to not grow crops, for crying out loud. So we have enough. I think the thing is, Joe and Popeye, is that we've become a very unruly mob, and the powers that be don't want to deal with that.
Well, what do you think, Popeye? I mean, take oil, for example. They've sold that as fossil fuels for all these years when they have nothing to do with fossils, right?
I played it the other day where Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty was talking about it, how back in the late 1800s, Rockefeller paid off all these scientists, you know, to come up with the idea that it came from all this decomposing matter, therefore it was carbon-based, or it was carbon-based, I should say, so it had to come from carbon-based life forms. It couldn't have come from the Earth itself. Therefore, it was finite, and they could jack the price up on it and jerk around with it, and they called it fossil fuels, and that's where the name came from, basically. But it's a little bit longer than that. Just look up on YouTube Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty talks about peak oil or fossil fuels. In fact, I'll try to find the audio clip for you if you want me to play it later for you.
Yeah, that'll be cool. But, you know, you're absolutely right. It's all a farce, you know, and they do it. It's very akin to the war on terror, where they get you afraid so they can control. It's a matter of fear. Oh, yeah, you know, you're going to be afraid that the world's going to get too crowded and you're not going to have water, or you're not going to have food, or no way to sustain a family. So they get you to fear that so that they can implement these green programs and these Agenda 21 programs where they're repopulating areas. You know, they're making, say, like, for example, the city of Detroit. Detroit's a great example of this whole rewilding thing, and we'll get into the rewilding project tonight as well, of how you had this big metropolis that has just gone to nothing, and you have acres and acres and acres of these abandoned houses that they're just plowing now. These whole neighborhoods are just going away, and it's being rewilded. I mean, it's amazing to see that metropolis, a city like Detroit, just go down the tube so fast. But you have to ask yourself, you know, is this all in the cards? Is this being planned out and executed by some sort of agenda, or some globalists sitting in a room smoking cigars, yucking it up as we all suffer? What do you think, Timmy?
Well, it's hard to believe a scenario like that, Joe, huh? He said facetiously.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, anybody that follows, you know, the New World Order thing, and you break that down a little bit farther into the North American Union deal, you know, there's obviously somebody has laid some concrete plans in place. I mean, that much is obvious. You know, they all try to disavow it and say, oh, no, we're not doing anything behind your back. But yet all these things are going on. I mean, when they signed the SPP, you know, the Security and Prosperity Partnership with Canada, back in, 2005, with Vicente Fox and, you know, from Mexico, and Paul Martin from Canada, and Bush. And, oh, that wasn't about a North American Union. We're just kind of collaborating a little. That's all, you know. So, but yet an agenda is being furthered, you know, all the way, you know.
Absolutely. So tonight on the show, we're going to go over what some of these fears are that they sell to you, that you get afraid of, or the people around us, they get afraid. And so they let these initiatives go through unprotested or uncontested, simply because they're afraid. Oh, yeah, we're going to run out of food. Oh, no. So we'll get into that. We're also going to get into the organizations that are actually pushing this agenda. And what's interesting and even more troubling is who's funding it. Because this is stuff that our grandparents were made aware of in the 1950s.
Yeah.
So sit tight, folks. It's going to be an interesting night of Agenda 21. And hopefully at the end of the show, you'll come away not being so afraid, but being emboldened to make some changes and to stand up against these globalists. So stay tuned. We'll be back in 3 minutes' time. Folks, the email address is thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. Joe Joseph here, along with Tim Watson. Our guest tonight, Popeye from Down the Rabbit Hole and federaljack.com. Discussing Agenda 21 and some of the snake oil that they sell us, the bill of goods that we accept. And, before the break, Popeye, you were talking about L. Fletcher Prouty, talking about how fossil fuels have nothing to do with fossils. Can you play that clip?
That petroleum wasn't what we thought it was, that it wasn't a fossil fuel, that it didn't come from fossil animals.
Yeah.
Is it just a mineral? Is it a mineral like any other mineral? Is that how it, what would you say? What's the origin of that?
You see, when they first found petroleum, because they were beginning to make motors and needed on axles of wheels on railroad trains and all that sort of thing, and remember, trains started in the beginning of the 19th century, then oil went from just a lubricant to a fuel, and it made it valuable. And Rockefeller happened to be the smartest man in the business at the time, but he made most of his money, or much of it, off the transport of the petroleum as well as selling it. But one thing they realized was, because oil is putting a price on oil is like putting a price on a pail of water. There's no initial cost. It's in the ground, and in those days they were, some of it almost what you'd call surface mining the oil. They didn't go down deep. So in order to get the price up, they hit on the idea that they would have to make it appear to be scarce. That after we take the next few barrels out, we're probably going to have to close this well, that kind of thing. A very fortuitous event. In 1892, there was a convention in Geneva of scientists to determine what organic substances are. Well, the definition of organic is a substance with hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. And so it's usually a living substance, a tree. You analyze a dead tree, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, and grass, and so on, living things. Animals, we are hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. So at this Geneva Convention, Rockefeller took advantage of sending some scientists over who said, oil, petroleum, is hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. Therefore, it must be derived from the spoiling, the rotting of formerly living matter. And playing the game properly, when this scientific convention was over, they defined oil as the residue from formerly living matter. Well, that makes it a fossil fuel. I don't know why they decided to use the word fossil, but it says formerly living matter is fossil. Well, of course, today, and another thing we should know is that there has never been a fossil, a real fossil, found below 16,000 feet. And you can't argue at 16,000 as a level line because someplace the ground sinks and so on. But 16 is what the scientists say, 16,000. We mine oil, or we drill for oil at 30,000, 33,000, 28,000 every day of the week. So right there, we rule it out that it isn't fossil fuel. It's called fossil fuel for the minds of the public to feel that it is an asset that is running out, being depleted. We talk about depletion allowance, which is a lot of, and actually, if you know the world's oil supply, you know that it is not going to run out for an awfully long time. It is the second most prevalent liquid on Earth. And we haven't begun to dig. Well, with all that background, you see, the people in charge of the petroleum business, for perfectly reasonable business things, like any other man in the business, wants to keep his price as high as he can get away with. And the way to do is just say, well, there's no more. The last barrel is going to cost $1,000, and then it's all done. And they preach that stuff. What bothers me is that in geology books, it's in there. The geologists say it's a fossil fuel. They've been bought. I mean, I went to a 4-year federal staff energy seminar run by the government of the United States during the so-called energy crisis. I was the participant that represented the railroad industry. The airline industry was there. Every AA, administrative assistant of senators and congressmen, was there. The CIA was there. The Defense Department was there. The State Department was there. Sometimes sitting right in front of me in the row would be Henry Kissinger with his friend, the head of Department of Defense. That's too bad. I can't put the names with them. But anyway, people like that, top men in the government, sitting there listening to the Federal Staff Energy Seminar. Well, what this was doing is for 4 years, they were teaching a propaganda line to the leading people in this country, and therefore to the leading people in the world, when you include the Schlesingers, Kissinger and Schlesinger, among others. And the object of it was, as Kissinger used in his own terms when it was time for him to speak, to create a world price for oil. In other words, not 30 cents a gallon here and 90 cents a gallon there, but let's get a world price. That's their goal, and they're trying to do that for wheat and everything else. We don't realize what the controls are, whether it's oil or some of these other things. Almost everything today is being categorized at the highest price they can possibly make it go. And so calling petroleum a fossil fuel is the basis for this system with respect to petroleum.
Isn't that interesting? And there's more to it.
Yeah.
Prouty gets into it. You can just go look up origin of oil, and it'll come up. But actually, I urge you just go to prouty.org, and you can purchase all these interviews that Leno Senek did with him. And this is something people should archive for themselves. But there you go, right from the first chief of special operations, Joe, under President Kennedy, the man who penned the executive order to destroy the CIA and scatter it to the winds, as Kennedy said.
Mm-hmm. No, that's cool, man. And, it just goes to showcase what these people will do to make you fear so they can advance their agenda. And this is just one piece of the puzzle. They have railways. Oh, yeah, we're improving mass transit and everything else. But then you go and look at some of the plans for Agenda 21, and you find that, oh, yeah, wow, this new railway that they're building, I think, Tim, you said that tonight out in California, a railway that they're building along I-5 fits the map just to a T.
Yeah, so they're already working on it.
Right, that's what's so scary, is that they're implementing this right in front of our faces. So what we'll do, starting in the next segment, is we're going to go over some of the organizations that are pushing this, and then who's funding them, and what the grand plan is, what the scheme is in A, trying to implement it, and B, overall, what they're going to try to achieve.
Well, it's funny how in that story that Popeye had, it had, Rockefeller mentioned in that story. So I just wonder how many more times that name will come up tonight.
You're not going to be able to count it on both hands combined, just so you know.
Yeah. This is a real problem.
Yeah.
This is a real problem, though, guys. I mean, it really is just a handful of people.
Dude, you could put a blindfold on, Joe.
Everything.
You could put a blindfold on, okay? Grab a rock, put a blindfold on, spin around 4 or 5 times, and just hurl the rock in a general direction, and you'll hit Rockefeller somewhere.
Yeah, there you go. That's very good.
That son of a gun is everywhere. And it's a daggum shame. But, hey, guys, when we come back, we're going to get into America2050.org and what they're all about. So sit tight. We'll be back in 3 minutes. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio, Conspiracy Chronicles, on Orion Talk Radio. Welcome back to Conspiracy Chronicles, folks. Joe Joseph here, Tim Watts, and Popeye from FederalJack.com. We're doing Agenda 21. And so we're going to bring up America2050.org. Now, here's one of the organizations that is pushing Agenda 21 really hard. And remember, this is all still Agenda 21. They've just rebranded it. And there's certain facets of Agenda 21 that are even being implemented in other countries like England. And we'll get into that tonight as well, because they have their own little club, I guess you could say, that's doing this. But if you go to the About page on America2050.org, you'll find it says America 2050 is a national initiative to meet the infrastructure, economic development, and environmental challenges of the nation as we prepare to add about 130 million additional Americans by the year 2050. America 2050 is guided by the National Committee for America 2050, a coalition of regional planners, scholars, and policymakers to develop a framework for the nation's future growth that considers trends such as rapid population growth and demographic change, global climate change, the rise in foreign trade, sprawling and inefficient land use patterns. Remember that, folks. We're going to get into that. Uneven and inequitable growth within and between regions, infrastructure systems that are reaching capacity, i.e. rail systems, and, of course, my favorite, the emergence of mega regions. And a major focus of America 2050 is the emergence of these mega regions, large networks of metropolitan areas where most of the population growth by mid-century will take place. Example of mega regions are the Northeast mega region from Boston to Washington, or Southern California from Los Angeles to Tijuana, Mexico. Now, that's very important, too, and I'll tell you why in just a second. They compromise multiple adjacent metropolitan areas connected by overlapping commuting patterns, business travel, environmental landscapes and watersheds, linked economies, and social networks. At least 10 mega regions have already been identified in the United States. And I'm going to stop there for a second, fellas, because a couple of big things to take away from that is they hit on sprawling and inefficient land use patterns. And basically what they're saying is all us people that live out in rural America, that live away from the population centers, why us living here is very inefficient use of land. Therefore, we're going to have to be relocated through either the use of eminent domain or other tactics, whether it be private people or private business that goes and buys it out and makes it a mega farm or whatever the heck they're going to do. But basically, it's taking away your rights to your land, taking it away if they want to, and putting you into one of these population centers or mega regions, as they're called here. And
that's going to be just a hell of an uphill fight, Joe. You know, I mean, when you're talking about that much kind of that kind of land, and you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier about, you know, frightening people into doing things, and that's how they do it. And so I, you know, as you're reading this, I'm just thinking, all right, you know, what mechanism are they going to use to get the people to beg for something they don't want? Because that's what they always do. You know, it's that Hegelian principle. You know, they create the disaster, they wait for, you know, the reaction, and then they propose, you know, a very unpopular solution that wouldn't normally pass under normal circumstances. So God only knows what they're going to come up with to get people to, to buy into this.
Yeah, exactly right. And then the second thing is these mega regions, they're talking about doing away with the 50 states and implementing these mega regions. That's what it will be. Whatever they're called, they're called. I don't, you know, Northeast Mega Region. I'm sure they've come up with a cooler name than that once it's officially implemented. But
by the way, it's interesting to note that they're not the FEMA regions, but the mega regions lie right in the FEMA region area.
Exactly.
Match it up on a map. It's really disgusting. It's like, they're peeing right in your cornflakes. They're like, hello.
Exactly. Now on this site. On this site, folks, there are maps, and you can pull up the maps of all sorts of different things, from mega regions to infrastructure changes, yada, yada, yada. And you'll come to find out that it's just like Popeye and Tim just said, that these mega regions actually fall right in the footprint to the existing FEMA regions. So it's just an interesting parallel. And you have to say, wow, did they come up with these FEMA regions as part of the grand plan to eventually go into this mega region type of mindset? I don't know. But one can say or glean from this that, yeah, it's a possibility that this has been in the works now for quite a long time. And we know Agenda 21's been in place for quite a long time. And finally, they talk about social networking and linking economies. Social networking will be big in the future because with this whole mega region concept, roughly 80% of the landmass, of America is going to be rewilded. And that means that it's going to be returned to its natural habitat or condition, or they'll use it for farming. But basically, it's going to be no humans. You'll be
road warfare.
Yeah, exactly right. So there would have to be a big push for social networking simply because in order to go between mega regions, your travel is going to be controlled. This is why you have TSA now, folks, by the way. It has nothing to do with terrorism because the terrorists are our special agencies like CIA and NSA and FBI. They're the ones that own Al-Qaeda, just like MI6 is the ones that own the Muslim Brotherhood. But they use that as a fear tactic to be able to control your travel, to get you used to the fact of having to show your papers or having restricted travel or having agents search you and grope your wife right next to you. And shame on you, by the way, folks. All you men out there that let that happen. When your woman's right there and she's getting fondled by somebody else, it's a damn shame. But this is why they're doing it. It's all part of the grand plan. And they have to control that. So that's why social networking is going to be huge if this plan is allowed to go forward. Absolutely huge. But it continues. It says, in Europe and Southeast Asia, governments are investing tens of billions of dollars in high-speed rail and good movement systems to connect networks of cities in what are termed global integration zones. Now, we have something akin to that. It's called a free trade zone up in Idaho that the Chinese have. Tim, have you heard about this?
No, I was actually raising a Spock eyebrow on that one, buddy. You beat me. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, they're called free trade zones. If you do Google search on that, there are these free trade zones that have different regulations and everything else, and it just so happens that by proxy, what it does is it gives areas or swaths of land to China to do what they want to do, like to manufacture goods here and ship them out, but it'll give them.
What you talking about? What you talking about? Say, holy cow, man! Are you kidding me?
But this is already these global integration zones are already being put in place in the United States. They talk about Europe and Southeast Asia. Yeah, it's happening here too. It says these counterparts to American mega regions are increasingly being viewed as the new competitive units in the global economy where knowledge workers can move freely among urban hubs. Knowledge workers. I mean, where's this terminology coming from? This is straight up Orwellian. It's unbelievable the type of language that they're
ingraining people right now. That's essentially what it is. They just start early and they start ingraining it, into your brain, into your consciousness.
That's right. Economic regeneration strategies are also being deployed at this scale to transition former industrial regions to the new information economy. America 2050 is serving as a clearinghouse for research on the emergence of megaregions and a resource for megaregion planning efforts nationwide. So there's a huge effort underway, apparently, and is being seen today to to establish these mega regions. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you who funds America 2050. So let's follow the money when we come back from break. And we head into the last segment of hour number 1. You're listening to the Conspiracy Chronicles on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Welcome back, folks. Just a little note, if anybody's experiencing the choppy audio, it's simply because Orion Talk Radio's grown so fast in the last 60 to 90 days that the amount of listeners now listening to the stream is actually taxing our servers to the point where there's not enough bandwidth to accommodate all the listeners. So our engineers right now are working on the problem, and we should have a resolution to it here any time now. But what does that say, Timmy? What does that say about alternative media in Orion, baby?
Yeah, it's growing fast. I tell you what, it's nice. It's nice that folks are listening and folks are paying attention because, again, you're not going to get it from the mainstream corporate media. All you're going to get from those guys is BS and, tomorrow's next scam. I don't know.
And they can always pull the archives, guys, because the archives won't be choppy. They'll be better. But that's good. That means that there's so many people that want to listen to the network that it actually bogged their servers down all day. You know how, I mean, that's a compliment. I don't take that as a problem. I take that as that's a salute to our work.
Yeah, that's right. No, absolutely.
That's awesome.
It's a salute to everybody out there listening because you're actually thirsting for real knowledge. You know, there's a thirst.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the listeners.
So that's fantastic. I'm very pleased that that's happening. And tonight's subject is very important because you have to understand that this is a rule by fear mentality. No matter what they do, whatever they're trying to implement, whether it have to do with food, water, shelter, anything like that, it's a fear of shortage. So tonight we're going to talk about that some more. But who specifically is funding America 2050? Tim.
Let's just think about that just a little bit. Now, if I was to grab a rock, like Popeye said, and spin around and chuck that rock, what would I? Oh, that's right. I'd hit a Rockefeller. So, okay, I'm going to go with Rockefellers for 500 points, please.
Yes, of course. You get 500 and then some. Why? Because other charitable foundations, and I say foundations because this harkens back, folks, to the 1950s Reese Committee, where they went and they found out that it was the endowments, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Guggenheim Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, all these people were conspiring to rewrite the history books and to take control of the public school system. That was just one facet. This has been a plan now for some time. And the Reese Committee
expiring.
Oh, absolutely. The Reese Committee exposed it for what it was. But that didn't stop them. They don't care. Why? Well, the law doesn't matter to them because all they got to do is pay the lawmakers. They're just the puppets. You know, when you hear special interest, yeah, there's special interests out there that throw money around that can influence and even write legislation that gets passed without even being read. All that stuff occurs, but it's all part of a plan. And it's a really simple plan. It's world conquest, and it's something that's been tried for a very long time now to happen again since the Roman Empire, and they've had trouble with it. They've had trouble with it. So this is like the next great attempt for world conquest. And so you have the Rockefeller Foundation leading the way, along with the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, the Surdna Foundation, the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, the J.M. Kaplan Fund, AECOM, Park Foundation, the William Penn Foundation, STV Group, and my favorite, the Ford Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So follow the money and see who it is, and you'll find out it's some very old money.
And some the line, you got to figure there's probably some Rothschild money in there too, but that's the stuff that's probably hidden.
Absolutely right. Now, one thing that Popeye kind of chimed in on when I was on his show on Friday night was how this some of the maps on here line up specifically with the Trans-Texas Corridor and the NAFTA Superhighway. Because you remember that was all part of the North American Union. And when I was reading the About Us in here, they talked about the Southern California mega region as spanning from Los Angeles down to Tijuana, Mexico. So right then and there, they acknowledged the fact that the Mexican border is pretty much toast. It's gone. Tijuana gets folded up into this mega region, and the Cascade mega region actually goes into Canada. So you've actually dissolved the borders between Canada and Mexico, and voila, you have your North American Union, because now all of a sudden sovereignty isn't an issue. So now they've accomplished that. So you see that by rebranding this as America 2050, they're able to fold in a lot of these old projects, a lot of these old names and agendas under this one new rebranded hat.
Well, there was a WikiLeaks document out just this last year, Joe. I don't know if you caught that one, but it was, they actually found that officials were actually discussing North American integration. And again, as I prefaced with, when I mentioned the SPP, the Security, Prosperity, and Partnership deal with Canada and Mexico, they denied that. And now, they try to deny this other deal, but yet WikiLeaks has got the document just released the last year. They're doing it, folks.
No, I mean, this is all happening. So what I challenge folks to do is go to the map section and take a look at their transportation maps. I'm going to go here right now, and I'll tell you which one it is. It is the one that is labeled recommendation for a trans-American passenger network. And you take a look at this, or the recommendations for a trans-American freight network, and this has the Trans-Texas Corridor and the NAFTA Superhighway just written all over it.
Superimpose it over the government's own map, Joe. Just take the two of them and superimpose it over one another in Photoshop, and you'll see how it's eerily similar. And then take, like Tim and I said earlier, take the FEMA region map and then superimpose that over top of it, and you'll see how they all kind of are in the same areas and how it all connects. But I guess that's all sheer coincidence.
Oh, it is coincidence.
Did you guys ever hear Al Gore admit that global warming is a scam and that it's all for world government? He admitted it in a talk. Did you guys ever hear it?
Wow, no, never heard it.
Here, I'll play the clip. It's like a minute long. Check this out.
United States, within 1 month of taking office, President Obama secured $80 billion U.S. for renewable energy and green infrastructure. And then just 2 weeks ago, the House of Representatives passed the Waxman-Markey bill, which, for all of its flaws, does put a price on carbon and is very much a step in the right direction. It achieves real reductions below the 1990 base level by 2020. And that is the threshold that many have said, including many in China, is the threshold that will dramatically increase the prospects for success. But it is the awareness itself that will drive the change. And one of the ways it will drive the change is through global governance and global agreements. But the many business leaders who have been present
now, wait, hold on. Let me rewind that just for one quick second. You see how he snuck that in there?
Mm-hmm. Many business leaders who have been governance and global agreements.
I mean, I could sit here and rewind it 1,000 times here. I'll play it one more time so it's perfectly clear because it has to go back a little bit further. But, I mean, he says global governance.
And one of the ways it will drive the change is through global governance and global agreements. But
global governance and global agreements. North American Union, North American Security Prosperity Act, or whatever the hell it's called.
Oh, Security and Prosperity Partnership, the one they signed.
That's the one. That's it.
And they actually had one before that in 1997 that very few people know about. It was kind of like the instead of being the SPP, it was the PPS, the Partnership for Prosperity and Security. So again, this goes back to 97, and then, they signed this, the SPP in 2005. So there is a methodical progress to what they're doing, folks.
Right. And it even goes back. I mean, the Reese Commission, they went through the logs of all their meeting, the minutes, and they were looking at meetings that happened back in 1903. I mean, this stuff has been going on for a long time, folks. This has been something that they've been trying to do now for a very long time. And like I said before, and I'll say it again, these SOBs are patient. They understand that this isn't going to be done in a generation. This is a multi-generational plan that they're undertaking, and in the hopes of doing it right this time. Every other time they've tried to do it, they've been absolutely defeated.
Yeah, look what happens now if you mention, doing away with national sovereignty. People still get worked up about it, but probably not half as much as they would have, in the 30s and 40s and stuff. And, people died to, fight, what was it? Badnarik said the other night that was, everybody's willing to fight, for freedom, but who's willing to kill for it?
Right. You don't, probably very few. And I would challenge you that, probably half of America couldn't tell you what sovereignty is. So I mean,
I think it all depends on who needs to be killed. That's the question.
Yeah, it is a question. Folks, sit tight. Don't go away. Hour number 2 of Conspiracy Chronicles is coming up. We have so much left to go over, so we'll try and jam it all into 1 hour's time. So sit back, take a break. We'll be right back with hour number 2. Don't go away.
In a world of big money power, accidents don't just happen, and coincidence is only an excuse for the guilty. Welcome to the Conspiracy Chronicles.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We must not fail to comprehend its grave implications.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations.
There has been an attempt, as perhaps you know now, on the life of President Kennedy. He was wounded in an automobile driving from Dallas Airport into downtown Dallas. The flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy died at 1:44 a.m. today, June 6, 1968.
An incident that took place less than 15 minutes ago at the Washington Hilton Hotel when shots were fired at President Reagan.
A second bomb has been found inside that federal building in Oklahoma City.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about.
Exactly, the second building.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
And now, here are your conspiracy detectives, Joe Joseph and Tim Watts.
Joe Joseph here and Tim Watts as well as we enter into hour number 2 of the Conspiracy Chronicles. And tonight, folks, Agenda 21 is the topic. I've got Popeye here from federaljack.com slinging some info. And we were talking during the break about, of course we said in hour number 1 that it's fear. They rule by fear. in everything that they do. They rule by fear. You know, you need to wear that seatbelt. Otherwise, you're going to go through the windshield. You know, Mom always said, if I threw that, put somebody's eye out. Everything is a rule by fear thing. You know what I mean?
Howley.
So, I mean, well, that's the way it is. It's almost like we've been conditioned to do it that way and to think that way, which is, in some ways, it's responsible. In other ways, you know, I always ask myself, how do my parents ever make it, man? There was no seatbelts in the cars. How'd they do it? I mean, gee whiz. They didn't need a law. So, I mean, it's just interesting how they implement this stuff. But you just had a quote, Popeye, from Henry Kissinger. Why don't you read that for the listeners that just detail what these are thinking?
Well, this is from the Bilderberg meeting in Evian, France, May 21st, 1992.
Yes. It's Henry Kissinger.
Yes, and Captain Marco Ramius was there with Henry Kissinger.
No, I wasn't at the damn Bilderberg meeting.
That's why you hijacked the Red October. All right. Anyway, here's the address from Kissinger. I mean, this is just a piece from his, overall address. This is just a little paragraph of it. And this actually should sum it up for you, ladies and gentlemen. Today, Americans would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. Tomorrow, they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told there was an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will pledge with world leaders to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by their world government. Well, that's right out of the horse's mouth.
Well, exactly right. But, I mean, do you see, folks, anybody that labels you a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, say hell yeah. That's not a bad thing. Because look at this information that we're slinging at you tonight, this is straight from the horse's mouth. You can't get any better than this.
And there's tons of quotes like what Popeye threw out there. I mean, all you guys do. I mean, there's the one by Paul Warburg where he says, we shall have one world government whether or not we like it. The only question is whether world government will be achieved by conquest or by consent.
Exactly right. I mean, these people are saying it out in the open because that's how cocky they are. But, I mean, really, there's no conspiracy theory about this. This is conspiracy fact. This is what this is all about. This is the truth. Yeah, life is 180 degrees out of phase from what you think it is. And it gets worse because in talking about this Agenda 21, they want to take all of our land and pretty much rewild it. And there's another thing called the Rewilding Project, or they've relabeled this as well to be called the Rewilding Institute. And that is basically to take the land, and they have three broad goals, they say, to effectively integrate conservation biology and wildlands and wildlife conservation, to provide a long-term hopeful vision for conservation in North America, and to create a North American wildlands network vision and a strategy to implement it. And they say to develop and promote the ideas and strategies to advance continental scale conservation in North America. Continental scale conservation in North America. I say it again. Particularly those or the need for large carnivores and a permeable landscape for their movement, and offer a bold, scientifically credible, practical, achievable, and hopeful vision for the future of wild nature and human civilization in North America. They're talking about this on a continental scale.
They're trying to rebuild Jurassic Park. What are they up to?
If you look at their picture, they got like a picture of the African savanna.
That's what I wanted. I was just going to say, it's like you got a freaking Bengal tiger there. You got a jaguar. You got a cheetah. You got an African.
All living in perfect harmony, and raccoons.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what happens when you have, predators around prey.
You won't want to live.
They all sit and they have tea together. The leopards, the lions come over and they're like, "Oh, ha ha ha! Come on, gazelle, let's sit down and have a spot of tea and crumpets together." Idiots.
This is how they'll force you out of the countryside. They just let all these like wild man-eating animals out there. It's like everybody will move to the city. See, they're showing the whole thing right here, guys. I'm just saying.
That's right. They have a page on here. They have a page on here on human population growth, and the quote is from Sir David King, science advisor to the UK government. Quote, "Well, the massive growth of the human population through the 20th century has had more impact on biodiversity than any other single factor." Mm-hmm. Right.
Wow, you sound like one of those snide douchebags. You do that real well.
Hey, thanks, man. But they get into population growth and biodiversity. Say life on Earth began some 4 billion years ago. Complex animal life evolved sometime over 500 million years ago. The human population explosion over the last 200 years is the primary driver of today's mass extinction. It is the exhaust of nearly 7 billion humans that caused the greenhouse effect, leading to catastrophic global overheating. They're saying, because we fart. That's the reason why. It's the exhaust of nearly 7 billion humans. I mean, can you believe it, folks? This is what they're trying to push. Unfreaking believable. It's because you fart that the Earth is warming up.
You remember they wanted to put, like, mufflers on cows? I'm not kidding. This was something the EPA was talking about. Like, they wanted farmers to regulate cow farts, and they wanted to have this, like, it was pretty much like a bag they wanted to hook up to the cow, and it would collect the cow farts. It's just the most insanely retarded things you'll ever see.
It is. It is absolutely retarded. So when we come back, we'll talk more about the Rewilding Project. And then I want to talk about its sister project, this America 2050. There's a sister project going on in England right now, and they have a timetable of 2040. Ooh, well, they're a lot smaller, too. So sit tight and stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio, Conspiracy Chronicles, on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Welcome back, folks. I was talking about the Rewilding Project before we went to break. And it's interesting. They highlight a certain somebody that's been getting a lot of press over here in the last 4 years or so as one of their scientific experts. And it just so happens to be John P. Holdren. It says in 1974, physicists John P. Holdren and Paul Ehrlich laid out in Science one of the most important scientific formulas, I equals PAT. Paul and Annie Ehrlich later explained, the impact of any human group on the environment can be usefully viewed as the product of 3 different factors. The first is the number of people. Second is some measure of the average person's consumption of resources. And finally, the product of those 2 factors is multiplied by an index of the environmental disruptiveness of the technologies that provide the goods consumed. In short, impact equals population times affluence times technology, or I equals PAT. Economic globalization has since become another factor. So they were talking about this in The Population Explosion by Paul and Annie Ehrlich. And this is all part of the globalist agenda to depopulate. They're saying that we're a virus, a cancer on the face of this planet. And they need to do away with us. It's all part of their grand plan. It's really a sad state of affairs, isn't it, Timmy?
Well, it explains a lot why, they let so many things slack, in our culture. I mean, I'm going to just pick one thing right here, cancer. And my apologies to anybody who's, got a cancer survivor, lost somebody because of cancer, or maybe going through that right now. But I mean, how long have we been fighting cancer, guys? I mean, for crying out loud, look at the money they pour in, and we still got people dying of cancer. This thing should have been cured a long time ago. And I guess the point being, they don't want to cure it. It's like Judith Baker said, with Popeye, they know how to give people cancer. They don't want to cure it. There's too much money involved and stuff like that. And there's too many people dying. So all these things that we're dying from, they just let it go. It just fits the plan. It fits the agenda.
Absolutely, it fits the agenda. But if you go, this Rewilding Institute or the Rewilding Project, these pages will blow your mind, folks. And again, this is right from the globalist mouth. This is what their plan is. Again, it's in conjunction with America 2050. These people are working along the same lines, trying to achieve the same goals. And Tim, today you found another website devoted to this, didn't you?
Oh yeah, the one from American Progress. So it's more than in just one place, folks. You can go to AmericanProgress.org, and you'll find a page that deals with the exact same thing. Coincidence again? So www.AmericanProgress.org, and then after that you do a /projects/2050. It's like I told Joe, if they've got a subfolder for 2050, I wonder how many other subfolders they've got in there. But it shows that there is a concerted effort going on here. It shows that there is a plan. I mean, that much you can see. This isn't just one website talking about this 2050 plan. We got a few people talking about it. So, and again, it's just all these little pieces that kind of come together and see it. And what we're giving you right now, what Joe's giving you and Popeye, are just little puzzle pieces, to this big picture that they're trying to paint. But they do it in little steps. So, you got that SPP, Security and Prosperity Partnership that was signed for the NAU in 2005, and then the PPS that was signed in 1997. And all these little things are all just steps. They're baby steps towards one goal. And this is where they're going. Because they're patient. That's why. They're patient. This Progress 2050 is a project of the Center for American Progress that develops new ideas for an increasingly diverse America. Diverse is such a crappy term. I hate to call it diverse, because diverse to me means to divide. Because it's a form of divisiveness. When you say diverse, it means many different things. But really, we're Americans. We're all Americans here. But boy, diversity to divide. And it's all part of the divide and conquer tactic. So this is how they usher in socialism, or that communal form of government, by doing that, by playing on differences. And it says the United States will become a nation with no clear racial or ethnic majority by the year 2050. This expected transition provides the progressive movement with an exciting opportunity to help America live up to its ideals of equality and justice for all. Isn't that nice?
It's just, it brings a tear to my eye. It
sound like an Amway, ad. It's an exciting opportunity.
Oh, it is. It's so exciting. Progress 2050 recognizes that diversity can be our nation's greatest competitive advantage, and seeks to build a progressive agenda that is more inclusive and reflects our country's rich racial and ethnic makeup. We do this by promoting initiatives, policy ideas, facilitating honest dialogue about the intersection of race and policy, analyzing demographics, and developing new leaders. Grooming new leaders, yeah. Is Van Jones here anywhere? You got to be down here somewhere. Come on now, Van. I know he's got to be in here. But do you see what I'm saying, folks? They play the diversity card, the divide card, because it's a form of control. It's a form of control. When you divide, you're able to isolate. When you can isolate, then you have the haves and you have the have-nots. You have the whites, you have the blacks. It doesn't matter who it is, but you've got one group pit against another. And they try to make it sound all happy and, oh, yes, it's our diversity because we're all going to come together and sing Kumbaya. But really, the policies that they're implementing don't do that at all. As a matter of fact, they do the exact opposite. and they cause more divisiveness. And that's why we have the biggest disparity in income that we've ever seen in this country, where the middle class is just eroding rapidly. And you're seeing the extreme rich and the extreme poor. Just really, the scales are really being tipped in that favor, in the rich's favor. And it's all part of the plan. All of these bailouts, all of that stuff, it's all part of Agenda 21. It's all about looting all this money so they can go and implement this plan and take over. The whole idea of a one world government is Agenda 21.
Yeah.
This is all, that's it. This is it. Whatever you want to call it, whether it be America 2050 or the Rewilding Project or Progress for America or whatever, this is it. It's all the same plan that these globalists have been trying to implement now for over 100 years.
This is certainly going to make it easier for them.
Yeah, you could say that again.
It's certainly going to make it easy for them.
Well, you know what makes it easy is when people see this stuff happen and they do nothing. That's what makes it easy for them.
Well, what did Edmund Burke say? The only thing that evil requires to triumph is for good men to sit back on their ass and do nothing, pretty much.
And that's what's happening now. That's what happens with our folks, man. It's the same thing. And I got news for you. We're not going back to the way things were, even if we win this fight. All we can do now is mitigate as much damage as possible in the hopes that our children won't live in the pits of hell. We'll be right back after these short messages, so stay tuned. Freedomlink Radio's Conspiracy Chronicles is Ken in the Information Nation. So stay tuned because Ken has a great program and it's a great 2 hours of radio. So listen to the Information Nation immediately following the Conspiracy Chronicles here. And again, Tim Watts here with Joe Joseph and got Popeye. And we're talking about Agenda 21. And, you know, guys, the population thing aside, this stuff is going on over in England with a ramped up date of 2040. And they're called Forum for the Future. Actions for a Sustainable World. I mean, this stuff is happening everywhere. So you can't think that sovereignty is going to even play a role come 2040 or 2050 if they have their way. Yes, thank you for the feedback, guys. I appreciate that. That's wonderful.
I was going to let Tim speak. Sorry about that, Joe.
I was putting together my shopping list for tomorrow.
No, I was trying not to step on Tim. I was going to let him speak. So.
Yeah, I got to make sure I hit the sales, the President's Day sales tomorrow, fellers.
I had some texting me in the chat window there, and I was a bad boy. I was texting, but I was saying talk after the show.
But seriously.
You're absolutely right, Joe.
This stuff is happening everywhere. So you got to imagine at some point in time, all these plans are going to converge on one another, and that's it. You know, that this is their ultimate goal, is to bring in this one world order, which is really Agenda 21, but on a global scale. So they have all these like little cronies or these little satellites. It's almost like you've got Rockefeller or something as the umbrella company, and underneath all these little corporations and stuff, they're just all, whether it be America 2050 or Forum for the Future or whatever, they're all just little pieces of the puzzle, but they all report back to the mother company.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Joe, and that's exactly what it is. You know, you've got your smaller, handlers, and then that bifurcates out, to the rest of their minions, and, you know, whatever they're doing to execute this plan. But it's like, you know, the whole theme of this show is conspiracy or coincidence. Conspiracy or coincidence. And I think it's pretty easy to see by some of the things that we've laid out tonight that this isn't a coincidence that these things are happening. I mean, every one of these things has been orchestrated by man. The PPS, the SPP, you know, the North American Union, all of these things are machinations of man. So again, it's not a coincidence. This is certainly a concerted effort, a conspiracy, if you will, to take us someplace we probably really don't want to go.
I don't believe in that kind of stuff.
You believe in this kind of... Dude,
No,
your show's
I don't
called
believe in
Down
that.
the Rabbit Hole.
I don't believe in that kind of stuff. I don't like,
Your show's called Down the Rabbit Hole.
I explained today on air that I don't believe in conspiracies at all, that I believe everything the government says. Right, I'm just kidding. Sarcasm to the nth degree.
My goodness, man.
No, they shouldn't be called conspiracy theories. We should change the name. We should make a concerted effort to change it to conspiracy facts, so that the term conspiracy theory was beat into the mass media and the people's heads. So why can't we do the same and change it for the better? Let's call it conspiracy facts from now on.
Well, yeah, we don't. As a matter of fact, I don't think I ever call anything conspiracy theories. As a matter of fact, when I am defending myself, when I bring this stuff up to coworkers or friends, and they say, "Oh God, there you go with your conspiracy theories again." There's no theorizing here. I'm not in the business of theorizing. I don't care about theorizing.
You want to shoot him down? You want to shoot him down, Joe? Just say to him when next time they say, "Well, you know, you have some crazy conspiracy theory." Oh, here we go, Joe and his conspiracy theories. You say, "Well, do you believe the government's official version of 9/11?" And they go, "Of course I do." Okay, well, just so you know, that by definition is a conspiracy theory. And Cass Sunstein, who works for President Obama, has even admitted so in his own papers that he wrote about this stuff. So go ahead and look it up. He admits that the government's own story is by definition a conspiracy theory, I'm doing air quotes, because it involves more than two people plotting something bad against the United States of America.
Sure.
So by definition, that's a conspiracy theory. So next time someone says to you, "I don't believe in conspiracy theories," you tell them, "Yes, you do. You just don't know it."
You know, Popeye, one of my favorite things to tell people now is, you know, because it's always the government that cries, you know, conspiracy theory, but yet the Justice Department prosecutes conspiracy theory every single frickin' day of the week. You know, every week during the year,
what do they charge protesters with when they get like mass protesters? What's the number one thing they love to charge protesters with? Conspiracy to commit riot.
Yeah.
What was the first word in there, Tim? What was that first word?
It's only a bad word. It's a bad word if you point your finger at the government. That's when it's a bad word.
And it's really not a bad word when you think about it, because conspiracy in and of itself, I mean, us doing this show, we're conspiring together. Only we're conspiring to actually change things for the better.
But it's only conspiracy if it's something bad. If you and I sit down and get to...
But it is bad to them.
Well, I guess when you look at it that way, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're probably like, "Wow, man, these jerks at Orion Talk Radio, they're conspiring to bring us down. That's no good. That kind of sucks." And here we are like, yeah, we conspiring, baby. Oh, shit, isn't it? But that's serious, man. I mean, this is all conspiracy. So conspiracy in and of itself is not a bad word. It's really not. Because
we're not got a
crazy
connotation to it. It's like any other
program to make it sound like you're bots, you're loony. You belong in a tune bin.
Training, Joe. That's actual Pavlovian training. That's done in school, and that's done not only in school but via society. Whereas if you dress differently, everybody points and laughs fingers, everybody points fingers and laughs at you. And that's Pavlovian. That's to get you to go along with everybody else, and that's to get that it's their way, because they know they can't police everybody themselves, so they get the society to police itself and weed out who and what they don't like, by having this people all react the same way, so that if one person out of 100 says 9/11 was an inside job, the other 99 point their fingers at them and go, ha, 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 you're crazy, ha, 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 you're crazy. And through that peer pressure, they hope people will just shut their mouths. And a lot of times people do, because they don't want to be singled out. They don't want to be picked on. Nobody wants to be made fun of. You know, and a lot of people, look, it takes a lot of courage to stand up for that once or twice, let alone years and years and years, or if you're a kid, or if you're a teenager, you know, or throughout your life. You know, professionally, you could have people, you'll have your boss, if you keep talking about conspiracy theories, you're fired. You know, even though that's illegal, it doesn't matter. It's that social pressure. It's that Pavlovian training that they teach everybody. The herd attacks the people that don't think like the herd, that think outside the box. It's really sad, because the people that think they're so righteous in attacking people and making fun of people that are different, in reality, are slaves. And they don't even know it. That's the reality of the situation. And there's a famous quote, and I don't remember who said it, but it's something along, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's something along the lines of the most enslaved man is the person, you know, is like, or the most enslaved person is the individual that thinks they're actually free when they're not.
Yeah.
And I know I'm paraphrasing it, and I don't remember the exact quote, but that's about, like, you know, the gist of it. And most of these people that laugh at all these other, you know, anybody like us that talk about this stuff, I don't take it personally. I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for you that you're narrow-minded to that extent that you can't deal with anything that's different. It's pathetic, and it's very sad.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me any. You know what I mean? Some people you can't help. I just thought I'd point that out.
You know, it's a good point, too, Popeye, because Joe and I have talked about this before, and that's, you know, the herd mentality, which you mentioned, but also, you know, the part, you know, where people want to conform. And that was part of those Solomon Asch conformity experiments back in the 50s. And the government full well knows this. They know that there's a segment of our population out there that isn't going to, they're not going to say what they think. They're going to go with the herd. They always do. That's just the kind of people they are. And that's what those experiments bore out in the 50s. They found out that, you know, if 15 people said the sky was pink, that 16th person would say
Well, that's some loud break music. Good night, Timmy. What are you doing?
I don't know.
Well, folks, don't go away. Last segment of the show is coming up, so we'll close it out in just about 3 minutes' time. You're listening to the Conspiracy Chronicles on the Orion Talk Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want some great radio to listen to during the day while you're at work, check out The Edge with John Stokes. Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 Eastern, right here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. It's Conspiracy Chronicles for Sunday night with Joe Joseph. Popeye's here with us tonight, and myself, Tim Watson. Before the break, before I got slammed by the music there, Popeye had made a point about people being conditioned to, I guess, to go, well, not go against the grain, but to go with the flow. He was talking about kind of the herd mentality that William Trotter used to talk about. But the other thing I was mentioning was the Solomon Asch experiments from the 1950s, those of you that are familiar with them. And the government, see, they know all this stuff. This is a playbook for them. And in the Solomon Asch experiments, they learned that there's a certain amount of people that will always go with the flow. So if you've got, what they did in those experiments was they tested, maybe say, well, one person was the test, but they'd make it look like there was a larger, you know, test group in there. So they'd have 15 people, and 14 of them were in on whatever the question was. So they'd ask them what color is the sky, and the 14 of them would say it's pink. And then that one other person, that's the person they're testing. And what they want to do is see what his response is going to be. And since everybody else said pink, he's like, well, geez, I don't want to be out of the norm. And he says pink. And that happened so many times, and that's what bore out of the Solomon Asch experiments, and the government knows that. They know that there's a lot of people out there. Hopefully it's none of you listening right now. I would hope not. But when pressed against, you know, the huge masses, if everybody else says something that's contrary to what you think, more often than not, this person wants to go along with the flow because they just don't want to be out of the norm. They want to be able to conform. So, you know, those of you, and what they found out was that, you know, a quarter of the population will always say, you know, what they think. You know, no, I'm sorry, the sky isn't pink, the sky is blue. And that's what you have to be out there, folks. I mean, is that what you are? I mean, you can ask yourself this. Am I the kind of person that's going to stand up, and will I say the emperor has no clothes, or do I want to go along with everybody else? I mean,
well, that's right. I mean,
throw a noodle.
Well, look at this. I mean, look at what people deal with the homeschooling. The ridicule and backlash that you have for that. Nor typically, the people that homeschool their children are people that stand up for themselves because they come under a lot of ridicule and a lot of pressure from state agencies and entities. So, just something to think about, folks, is that a lot of you out there are probably part of that 25% that do speak out. The biggest thing I can tell you is that the first thing you have to shed, if you're not one of those 25%, is the I care what other people think mentality. You have to cast that aside.
Yeah.
And let people like you for who you are and what you believe in. Remember, we don't have to agree on everything. And that's another thing, too, with the ushering in of political correctness. We now think that everybody has to conform to agree and to get along, and that's not true. We can have our differences and our individuality and still be friends, Just because I like heavy metal music, that doesn't mean I can't be your friend because you like country. It's just it's as simple as that. People have to like you for who you are. And that is something that's been programmed out of society, and everybody is a conformist now, and that's what you get. And you have to break yourself out of it. We're actually in the matrix, aren't we, Tim?
Absolutely. You got to be able to, again, stand up and say, I'm sorry, the emperor is not wearing clothes. I'm not an idiot. I have, God gave me a brain to reason with, that sits on my shoulders, and I should be able to figure things out on my own. I don't need somebody else to tell me,
Absolutely.
when black is black and white is white. So,
no, for sure. So, I mean, tonight, folks, we've kind of laid it all out for you to show you how Agenda 21 is being implemented and how they've kind of rebranded the whole Agenda 21, North American Union, the Security and Prosperity Partnership, and how they're going about it now. They're doing it more so as the mother company or the father company, depending on how you roll, has really started all of these little satellite corporations underneath the umbrella. And they are organizations like America2050.org or forumforthefuture.org or Progress 2050, Progress America. What is it, American Progress, Tim? I think it is.
Yes, AmericanProgress.org.
Right, AmericanProgress.org. You have all these little organizations that are all pushing forward at full speed ahead to do this. Rewilding.org shows about population, the problem with the population, and uses Tom P. Holdren, the same guy that the father of eugenics in a way, one of the fathers of eugenics along with Kissinger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is huge. These
just pop up all the time.
Yeah, it's akin to a front company with the mob, or an intelligence agency, and that's what these things are. And all they're doing is pushing agendas. They're buying our elected officials, and slowly over time they're implementing these changes so that one day we're going to wake up and the world as we know it is going to be totally transformed into something that we didn't want ever.
Can I read you something really quick that was sent to me by an active duty soldier?
Sure, go ahead.
It kind of sums up how insane things have gotten and how much they've changed just in the short period of time that they were deployed. I'm not saying a year is a short period of time, but you know what I mean. As opposed to a 10-year period of change. But it's on Federal Jack. The article's called, "Can Someone Please Tell Me What the Hell Happened to Our Country While We Were Gone?" And this comes from an active duty sergeant in the Army. You're insane. As the chalk leader from my flight home from Afghanistan, I witnessed the following. When we were on our way back from Afghanistan, we flew out of Bagram Airfield. We went through customs at BAF, which is Bagram Airfield. full body scanners, no groping, he puts in parentheses, had all of our bags searched, the whole 9 yards. Our first stop was Shannon, Ireland, to refuel. After that, we had to stop at Indianapolis, Indiana, to drop off about 100 folks from the Indiana National Guard, and that's where the stupid started. First, everyone was forced to get off the plane, even though the plane wasn't refueling again. All 330 people got off the plane, rather than let 100 people from the National Guard get off, the Indiana National Guard. We were filed from the plane to a holding area. No vending machines, no means of escape, only a male-female latrine. It's probably important to mention that we were all carrying weapons. Everyone was carrying an M4 carbine, rifles, and some, like me, were also carrying M9 pistols, Berettas, on their thighs. Oh, and our gunners, the machine gunners, the heavy gunners, had M240B machine guns. Of course, the weapons weren't loaded, and we had been cleared of all ammo well before we even got to customs at Bagram. Then again, at customs when they came in to Indiana. The TSA personnel at the airport seriously considered making us unload all of our baggage from the secure cargo area and having it re-inspected. Eventually, they let them go, but they had them, and it goes on, they let them go eventually after they kept jerking their chains. You can check the whole thing out. But again, he points out again, this is probably another good time to remind you that all of us were carrying actual assault rifles, and some of us were also carrying pistols. So again, we have to check for security threats, but all of them are carrying guns. This is the absurdity. And it's our military. So wait, it gets worse. So now they're going through, and they make them all line up and go through security to get re-scanned and everything again and patted down before they get back on the plane to fly home. Now, this is in the country now. Conversation goes on like this in front of the guy. They confiscated someone's Gerber multi-tool. Confiscated. Doesn't matter that he's military. Confiscated it because he could kill everybody on the plane with it.
He's got a gun. An M4.
I know. But they say, wait, this is the insanity of it. So then they try to take a soldier's nail clippers, and the guy argues with him, and here's the conversation. TSA guy, you can't take those on the plane. Soldier, what? I've had them since we left the country. Well, you're not supposed – this is the TSA guy. You're not supposed to have them. Soldier, why? TSA guy, they can be used as a weapon. Soldier touches the buttstock of the rifle. But this is actually a weapon, and I'm allowed to take it on. TSA guy, yeah, but you can't use it to take over the plane because you don't have bullets. Soldier, and I can take over the plane with nail clippers? TSA guy, awkward silence. And then the other soldier behind him was like, dude, just give him your effing nail clippers and, we'll go. And the soldier threw the nail clippers at the guy, and then they got on the plane. But, just in insanity, the soldier is pointing it out right there. A combat veteran, somebody that ought to know about operational security and security in general, personal safety, firefights, everything else. And he's pointing out to this TSA douchebag that this is insane, that he's confiscating a pair of nail clippers when he's got an assault rifle in his hands. And that everybody else around him has machine guns and pistols.
It's unbelievable. But, this is all part of the conditioning. It has nothing to do with security. The fact is that they are pushing this fear on the American people because it's a means of control. And so this is how they're going about implementing their agenda. It's an absolutely horrific thing that's going on. And think about this, folks, as we close the show. Look at how the world is today, and think about how it's going to be for your kids. Think about how it's changed in just the last 10 years alone. Are you willing to sit idly by and hand this world over to your children, knowing what it could be? Unbelievable. Thanks, Popeye, for coming out. Thank you, Tim. Next show is Tuesday evening from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Thank you to all the listeners out here, and thank you for crashing the stream tonight. That means we're doing our job.